Anbernic's new device from last month is the new Anbernic RG406H, and it follows in the footsteps of the RG556, the RG Cube, and the RG406V by using the same T820 processor, but this one combines all of the best features from each of those models into one single device. The 406H is a mashup of all of the T820s in a nice way. Let's take a look. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to be doing a review on the Anbernic RG406H. Earlier this year, the Anbernic RG556 got us started with the new T820 lineup of devices, and we've culminated in the RG406H, which might actually be the best of the bunch because it's kind of a combination of the bunch. It has the comfort of the RG556, the great Dpad from the RG Cube, and the great sticks and the nice screen from the RG406V. Spec-wise, there's nothing else exciting or new here from the previous models. It's the T820 processor, 8GB of RAM, 5000 mAh battery, Hall sticks, Hall triggers, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and video out. All in one, it's actually a nice package that you can purchase from Go Game Geek with my code Joey for $187 shipped worldwide. I've actually been told that they don't charge you taxes for those of you in the EU, so it might actually be cheaper for you to check this out. Save some money, there's a link in the description. Okay, so first off, let's talk about the great, and I mentioned it before, but it is actually the comfort of the device. It's super comfortable. It has all of the bump outs and thickness in the right spots, and it makes it a nice joy to use. I would have liked to see them use the rubbery style plastic that they did with the blue on the RG556. That's really the only upgrade that I could look at personally, along with having a blue color if they would do that. But in comparison to 99% of devices out there, this is very comfortable. Having only used the Retroid Pocket 5 now for the last few weeks, it really was interesting to test drive the 406H and see the comfort upgrades over the 5. Next up is the sticks, and I'm glad they're at least using new sticks here on their T820 lineup. No more Switch-style sticks. Anbernic actually copied Retroid's base and put their own caps on them, and the result is sticks that have a wide range of motion, no cardinal snapping issues, and they feel great to use. These are the same sticks from the RG406V, and I think one concern that I had coming in was that they would be too tall and they would stick out way too much on the device. On the one hand, while you're not using it, it definitely is a little weird to see. They stick out a lot and they just look off and seem weird. But during actual gameplay and actual usage, I didn't find them to be a concern or an issue, and actually it was a good thing. Because of the wide range of motion, it helped having them be taller. Most of my complaints on the sticks are they're just a little bit too slippery. You could blame my cold Canadian hands, but the tops are a bit too slippery to get good grips with, and thankfully that is an easy fix with so many different stick cap options out there. We can't talk about the sticks without talking about the Dpad, which Anbernic is using the same Sega-style Dpad from the RG Cube, and it is a great choice here. This type of Dpad has grown a lot for me, and I find that I'm starting to prefer it to regular D-pads just because it's so much more comfortable and more accurate, and there's more of it to play with. It's not just in fighting games, also platformers, but even just normal Pokemon usage. The D-pad to me is a standout, easily, and since I've been using it a lot with the RG Cube XX, it felt great again to use it here. Lastly, on the great, and it's the battery life. There is a 5000 mAh battery inside of here, and it's a decently efficient processor. And so here's a quick rundown of my battery tests. All of this is with 100% brightness, Wi-Fi on, and 10% audio, as well as a 100% charge to 0. Super Nintendo got 525 minutes, or just under 9 hours. Nintendo 64 got a nice 600 minutes, or 10 hours of battery. Don't ask me why Nintendo 64 got more. I actually did the Super Nintendo test twice and the Nintendo 64 test twice and got the same answers on both. GameCube with native resolution got a whopping 375 minutes, or 6 hours and 25 minutes. Lastly, we have PS2 with native resolution at 250 minutes or just over 4 hours. Moving on to the good, and let's start with the screen. On the one hand, this is a great IPS display at a 4:3 aspect ratio with 960 by 720. That is a better resolution than previous Anbernic devices, so great scaling and overall is right on the good side and is an upgrade over 480p, thankfully. But I think the miss here, which we'll talk about later, is when you have your competition just adding OLED screens and Snapdragons and all of the other benefits for a few bucks more, the IPS display on here starts to look very dated in comparison. However, it is still a good screen overall on brightness, colors, and more, and so that's why it's here. On the neutral end, and it's the face buttons. So this one is a bit weird, but both my RG406V and RG406H have hard to push buttons, like significantly harder to push than any of my other Anbernic devices. However, talking to other people that own both of these models, and they don't seem to have that issue. It would be weird for me to have the same problem on two different devices months apart, but I do, and I have no idea why, so that is why this is in the neutral category. I don't know what to make of this, and I know that I'm not a fan of it. Anbernic usually gets buttons right, so I don't know what happened here. Still on the neutral front here, and we're going to end off with the speakers. Down-firing speakers are always going to get a negative point from me, for as long as they exist. We've seen it, time and time again, even on smaller handhelds, that they can absolutely do front-firing speakers. They just choose not to design for it. The speakers here are passable, but not good or great. Let's have a quick listen with varying audio levels. Last on the neutral end, and it is the performance. I have seen the T820 processor be hyped up to be perfect for PS2, perfect for GameCube, perfect for everything, and that just isn't the case. You need to be aware of what you're buying here. On the PS2 end, no, this is not a PS2 processor in the way that you're thinking. It can play some of the catalog easily, without tweaks, at a native resolution, but you're going to be heading into that settings menu often to fix the majority of PS2 games, popular ones that you want to play. And often you're not going to be able to run them no matter what you do. I would also not expect upscaling at all here. And it's actually the same scenario with GameCube. And this is one of those scenarios where you'll pull up the beginning of a game and you'll check it and you'll be like, awesome, this runs well. But the moment that you actually play through that game and get further into Wind Waker or Twilight Princess or a lot of other GameCube games, you're going to realize that no, the performance just isn't there. So you'll be headed into those settings again to fiddle around with resolution, enable VBI skip, enable other performance hacks, and so on. Now, a lot of people are fine with that, and that's perfectly okay, but I just want to set the right expectations that I think some of the PS2 and GameCube catalogs are playable and easily at native resolution, but this is far from the perfect device for both of those systems. But before you ask, and there's no real point to dive deep into this, but all of the other retro systems on below are all perfect. So PSP, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, all of the other ones, all fine. That's what this handheld is good at. My unpopular opinion that you won't like is that I would personally never play anything above PSP on the RG406H just due to performance. And I would consider this to be a great device for upscaling Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast and so on with a nice screen. But again, that is just my personal opinion. I just prefer not having to fiddle around with settings and do all of that sort of thing. I would just get a better device and do it there. On the bad end, it is the software. You still can't use video out and charging at the same time. It is one or the other. You either charge or you do video out. There's no in between. You also still can't do GeForce Now for streaming. Not that you'd have a good time on a 4x3 screen, or with the Wi-Fi chip, as I've pointed out in previous videos, that Anbernic really cheaped out on these Wi-Fi chips. The range and throughput are real bad, and Anbernic is not going to update this device ever, at all. Nothing meaningful, at least. The last update we got was for gyro on the 556, and nothing else since. So despite the fact that this has an over-the-air updater included, you will never see an update for this device. What they will do is release a 407H with the fixes that should have been in the 406H. So yeah, be aware that over-the-air updater is practically useless. But also sticking with the bad, and it is the lack of fast charging. Charging the 406H is super slow compared to any other device like Retroids, for example. I charge my Retroid device and it's fully charged in like half an hour. I have to charge the 406H and I'm waiting an hour, hour and a half. It takes forever to do so. Okay, and so we're going to end off here with a comparison between the RG406H and the Retroid Pocket 5, because I feel like a lot of people are probably curious how they compare. Using their retail pricing, the RG406H is $187 shipped, and the Retroid Pocket 5 is $239 shipped, making it a $52 price difference, at least for countries where this applies to. Now, that is a sizable price difference. It is not easy, even for me, to say, you should buy this over this. Even despite all of the benefits that the Retroid Pocket 5 has, $52 is a third almost of the price of the 406H, so that's a big chunk of money. However, the 5 has a much better 5.5-inch, 16:9 1080p OLED screen, which Anbernic actually used in their RG556. It has much better performance with the Snapdragon 865 processor, which has no issues playing GameCube, PS2, or other systems, and upscaled, and I would argue it has better software as well. GeForce Now isn't a problem, and all of the other weird quirks with Anbernic software aren't an issue on Retroids, along with the 5 having a much better Wi-Fi chip for streaming and other uses. Retroid also updates their Android software, whereas Anbernic just lets the device die and then releases a new one. So, in trying to be fair here, you could dumb this down to better screen and better processor over the 406H. Because, in my opinion, a lot of the rest is either equal or the 406H comes out ahead. For example, the sticks are equal, but the 406H has them in a much more comfortable position at stick top. Both D-pads are fantastic, and I'm perfectly happy to use either of them. Comfort-wise, the 406H comes out ahead, and it's just a much more comfortable device, especially with that stick top. And I think that's really all the important bits when we're comparing these side by side. However, I think the better comparison point is the Retroid Pocket Mini. The 3.7-inch 4x3 OLED screen on the Mini is a lot better than the 4-inch 4x3 IPS display on the 406H. That 0.3-inch difference disappears super quickly when you're comparing an OLED display to an IPS display. And pricing-wise, it is a lot closer as well. The Retroid Pocket Mini is $214 shipped, so it is a price difference of just $27. And you get a much more powerful device, an OLED screen, and the same size. Now, if you're asking me, I would of course go Retroid Pocket 5 over the RG406H 10 out of 10 times. I would also go Retroid Pocket Mini over the RG406H 10 out of 10 times, but those are top tier devices. That doesn't mean there isn't a place for the 406H. For example, a lot of people in countries that don't have access to Retroid and have hard budgets, the 406H is still a good choice. But I would argue that it is a bit more expensive than it should be. Given the competition, this really needs to be in that $150 or lower US dollar range, especially when Snapdragon devices are at the $200 price point. But I am actually pleasantly surprised by the RG406H. It is an overall good device. It is a nice package. Anbernic actually did well here. I would probably put this ahead of the 406V on my best of list, so this would slot in at probably 6th best of the year, which is high praise, I think, in my opinion, but it is still a good choice. I think if you can find this at a really good price, then yeah, pick it up. As long as you don't have anything better It would be weird to have a Retroid Pocket 5 and a 406H. They don't really do different things, so depends on what you own right now, and if you're looking for a slightly more powerful device, then yeah, keep this in mind. Just be aware of what the negatives are, what the limitations are of the 406H. So that's going to be a wrap for this one. Check out my links in the description to support me on Patreon, find my website with all sorts of guides and videos, or just to find me on other social medias, because I'm slowly whittling that down to I think just Blue Sky at this point. But either way, hope you all have a good one, and thank you all for watching.